In this video, we're going to look at adding stairs. So let's get started right away here by zooming in near the front of the building, and I'm going to go directly to the stair tool. Now, I'm not going to change any of the settings. We're going to accept all of the defaults. I'm going to simply click a point on screen here to start the stair, and then simply move the mouse a little bit away from that first point, and you'll start to see the stair get created. Now you can draw the stair in any angle that you like, so just sort of move in the direction you want to go, and notice that little gray message down beneath the stair that says a number of risers created and a number remaining. So what I want you to do is move the mouse all the way so that it says 18 risers are created and 0 are remaining, and when it does, go ahead and click to create our first stair. That's all we need to do. We're going to click the Finish Edit mode, and that will not only create the stair, but let's zoom in just a touch here. You can see it also creates a railing on either side. Okay, so with 2 clicks, we've created a stair. Now let's take a look at that in 3D. So I'm going to come over here to the Quick Access toolbar and click the little birdhouse icon to open up the default 3D view, and let me zoom in there to get a better look at that stair. Okay, so not too bad for 2 clicks of the mouse. Let's tile these 2 windows now side by side so that we can continue to work in the plan view but see our progress in 3D as we go. So I'm going to go to the View tab here and click Tile Views, and then just make sure that you can see a little bit of space here on both views. So I'm just going to adjust my screen a little bit, and I'm going to create a second stair in this location. So we just created a straight run stair by using all of the risers in a single run. But if we go back to the stair tool, make sure you're in the plan view when you do this, click on the stair button, and this time I want you to click your start point and then move just a few risers and click again. So notice the difference both in 2D and in 3D. So here in the plan view, we can see how many risers we've created. I've created 5 in my example. You don't need to do 5, it's just whatever number you clicked. But notice that the little run also appears there in the 3D view. Okay, now what I'd like you to do is move away from that some distance, click, and then start moving again. Notice that those 2 runs are going to be connected together with a landing when you click. So I'm going to create some more risers there, and you can see the landing has appeared. That's controlled by this setting here on the options bar. Okay, so what that means is you just simply need to focus on placing runs, and Revit will fill in landings wherever they're required. And it will even shape those landings based on the context of what you're drawing. So if I kind of come over here somewhere and start drawing another run at this angle, notice that it creates an appropriately shaped landing. So now I'm going to finish this up by using up the remaining risers over here, and I've created this sort of multi-landing stair now because I've got several short runs and several landings along the way, and I'll click Finish, and of course I get the stair that shows here in 3D, and of course the railing on either side. Now, those are the absolute basics of using the stair tool, just in terms of the mechanics of actually drawing a stair. Feel free to draw some other shapes if you like, and in fact, I'm going to point out just a few other tools that you might want to experiment with. We've been focused on straight run stairs, which is all I'm going to do in this video, but on your own, if you want to explore spiral and L-shaped and U-shaped, you can do all of those as well. I'm going to click Cancel here to cancel that edit mode. I'm going to select this stair and delete it, select this stair and delete it, and notice of course that that will also delete the railings. So railings are hosted to the stairs, so if you delete the host, then the hosted elements also delete. Now click over here into the 3D view, scroll down on the project browser, and make sure 3D is active here, and then double click this view called 3D stair. Okay, so that's going to open up another tab in this tile on the left, and so your 2 3D views are here. Then I want to click back over here into the floor plan and pan and zoom in on the lobby area here on the floor plan. So this 3D view that I provided in the exercise file is looking at that same space in 3D. Okay, so now we're going to create the stair that's actually required for this building design, and we're going to build it in the 2D view, but we're going to see it come together in 3D as we work. Okay, so this can be, it's not required, but this can be a nice way to do it. Okay, all right, So I'm going to go to architecture, click the stair tool again, and this time I want to point out some of the settings that we've already seen, but just in a little bit more detail. Okay, first of all, we are drawing runs and straight run, and as I indicated, if you want to explore the other shapes later, you're welcome to do so. We're not going to do that now. We've already talked about automatic landing. We're going to benefit from that. We're going to keep that turned on. Right next to that is actual run width. Now, mine is set to 3'8", which is appropriate for the building codes that I typically work under. So if you're working in Imperial, set it to 3'8". If you're working in metric, go with 1100 millimeters. If you work in an area with a different building code and you want to choose a different number, that should be fine as well. But for this example, either 3'8" or 1100 should give us good results. Now, looking at the properties palette, the stair that you're drawing should be called steel pan stair. I added this type to the exercise files just to make sure that what we were seeing in Imperial and metric was the same. So the name of the stair is called steel pan. If it's not, open up the type selector and choose it now. We're going to go from L1 to L2. So that just simply means we're going to start at the lower level and we're going to go up to the second level. Makes perfect sense. That ends up giving us 18 risers. So this parameter here that says desired number of risers, that gets automatically calculated for you based on the settings that are in this type called steel pan stair. Now, if I scroll down a little bit, it's calculating the actual riser height as a consequence of that 18. So if you take the floor to floor height between level 1 and level 2 and divide by 18, you come up with this number here. Okay, so you can't change that number, but you could potentially change this number. If you try to set this number smaller than the number that's there, it will probably generate a warning and it will tell you that you've exceeded the maximum riser height. Okay, so I'm going to click OK there and set this back to 18. So notice it does let you click OK if you wanted to. So if you deliberately want to create risers that are too tall, it is possible to do that. Likewise, you could change the tread depth and make it smaller or bigger, but if you go smaller, that might also generate a warning. Well, let's leave this at 18. Let's leave this at whatever it was set to. It's 11 in the Imperial file. It should be 275 in the metric file. Now, where do those settings come from? What's actually controlling whether or not a warning displays? Well, if we go to Edit Type, here at the top, you will see a maximum riser height and a minimum tread depth. So in the Imperial file, that's 7 inches for the maximum riser and 11 for the tread. And in the metric file, that's going to be 175 for the maximum riser height and 275 for the minimum tread depth. So we're not going to change any of that. I just wanted to point out to you where those settings are coming from. So simply click cancel here and we're ready to start drawing the stair. So this one we're going to do a little bit more systematically. So I'm going to click a start point right about here in the lobby area and start moving directly to the right. When the gray message says that 9 risers are created and 9 are remaining, click your second point to create the first run of this stair. Now we're going to move straight down so that we're lining up with the first run, click a third point, move back to the left, and create the remaining risers with a fourth click, like so. And that creates a U-shaped switchback stair and, of course, fills in the landing for us automatically because we had the checkbox chosen for that option. I'm going to zoom in here, and the distance between this run and this run is random right now because I just eyeballed the 2 runs. So to rectify that, I'm going to use a dimension, just like we've done with other elements in Revit. So I'm going to use my Align Dimension tool, or a DI, pick the inside face of the first run, and I want to look at the tooltip and make sure it says runs. If it doesn't, use your tab key to make sure that it does say runs. So if it says supports, you want to tab. So then I'm going to go runs to runs and place the dimension over here, click the modify tool to cancel, come back and select the lower run now, and if you set that dimension from run to run, then it should activate that dimension. And now you can type in the value that you want, which is 8 inches in Imperial or 200 millimeters in metric. So before we finish this, there's one more setting I want to point out to you, and that is the railing setting. When we created the first few stairs, they automatically created railings. But why? Well, that's controlled by this setting here. So you can set that, it might be set to default. You can set it to default. You can even set it to none. So if you want to create a stair without a railing, you can set it to none. But the one we're going to choose for this example is the IBC pipe railing, IBC pipe plate stringer here. It should already be chosen, but if it's not, just pick it from the list. And then for the position, I want to change that to stringer. Okay, so it's probably defaulting to treads. Let's change it to stringer and then click OK. Let's click the finish button here to complete the stair. And we now get our new switchback stair complete with a railing on each side. Now, you probably are getting a warning here about the inner railing telling us that there's a break in it. We're going to address that in a future video. So for now, I'm just going to click anywhere to dismiss that warning and deselect the stair. So that's the basic mechanics of building stairs. Feel free to experiment further in this file before continuing. In this video, we're going to continue working on stairs, and we're going to take an existing stair and do some modifications to it. So the first thing that I want to point out is this exercise file has two views when it first opens. So the 3D stair view is here, and notice that there's also a floor plan, architectural level 1 floor plan open as well. So I'm going to start with the 3D stair view, make that the active view, go to the View tab and click Tile Views, or you can type WT. And then I'm going to adjust what we see on both sides. So in the 3D view, I'm going to zoom in kind of closely here at the transition of the inner railing. And then I'm going to zoom in roughly the same spot in the floor plan as well. Now let me go in nice and close on the floor plan because I think it's really easy to see the problem. Notice that in the upper transition there, it's kind of disjointed and sheared off. And you can see that a little bit in the 3D as well. Now, another way that you could see that there's a problem there is to actually hover over the railing in 3D, press the Tab key, and then that's going to allow you to select the top rail component inside that railing. And when we do, you should see that there's a button here that says Show Related Warnings. And when I click that, that's going to display this dialog, which says what we can already see very clearly in both views, that the rail is not continuous and there might be a break and a sharp angled transition. So yeah, we're seeing that, and it's just confirming that for us here. Now, there are potentially a few different ways that you could solve this, and your first instinct might be to select the railing and start manipulating it. It's not really the railing that we want to modify, because the shape of the railing is actually coming from, or as a consequence of, the shape of the stair, because this railing is hosted to the stair. So what we actually want to modify here is the stair, not the railing, and the railing will then take care of itself. Okay, so let me select this stair, and I will click the Edit Stairs button here to go into the edit mode for the stair, and the modification is actually quite simple. The first thing I want to point out to you is a stair is made up of multiple subcomponents. So we have runs. In this particular stair, there are two of them. And if you wait for the tooltip, you can see that it says runs there. We have landings, okay? And this one has just the one landing, but there it is right there. And then we have supports. And supports are like the stringers and the other supports all the way around the stair. Now, all of those pieces are interconnected to one another. So if you manipulate one, it'll have an impact on the others. So what we're going to do is select this run here at the bottom, go to our Move tool. I'm going to pick a start point anywhere on screen, but up here out of the way is perfectly fine. And I'm going to start moving to the left. Type in the value you want to move. In the imperial file, I want to go 1 foot 6. If you're working in metric, do 450 millimeters and press enter. And you can already see that that has corrected this lower portion of the stair quite nicely. Notice that it has now added this dog leg to the landing, and it's also added in a new support here because we have a nice smooth transition now from sloped to flat. So we can repeat that same process with the upper landing to correct this kind of disjointed connection right here. So I'm going to select that upper landing, go to the Move tool, pick a start point, start moving to the left, and this time I want to go 1 foot or 300 millimeters. And now you can see that we have a nicer transition there on both sides. Okay. Now, You obviously have to have enough room in your design to accommodate the larger landing. But honestly, in most cases, not only is this the simplest solution, but it's really the best solution because most building codes call for that kind of a configuration anyway. So if you're trying to follow a particular building code, there's a pretty good chance that it's going to require those kinds of clearances. And so the solution to both problems is as easy as moving the runs. Let's click Finish and see the result. You can see that now not only has it corrected the stair, but notice that the railing is much nicer. And if I tab in and select that top rail, notice that the warning button is gone because the warning no longer exists. There's no need to show us that as a condition anymore. Okay, so that was a real easy solution to that problem and gives us a much nicer transition there. Now, the next thing I want to point out is a little bit more about the interconnected behavior of those different parts and pieces. So I'm going to select the stair and go back into Edit Stairs. And let me zoom out in both views now, just so we can see the entire stair. So this time I want to direct your attention to the riser numbers. Now remember, those numbers came into play when we placed the stair runs in the first place. So the points you click will set the start and end run. Now, if I select one of these runs, I'm going to pick the upper one where we go from riser 1 through 9. Notice that there are these grip controls at the end. There's a little dot and a little triangle. And I'm going to show you both of these. Now, I'm going to start with the little dot, and mine are right down the center of the stair, but those grips will follow the location line of the stair. And if you want to experiment with stair location lines, notice that there are actually 6 different options, but I'm going to leave mine right in the center. And I'm going to take this little dot here, and I'm going to drag it just a couple of clicks to the right. And notice what happens. We're now at riser 3 there. We're still at 9 on this side. So what it actually did was removed the bottom 2 risers. Now, if you look at it here in 3D, the stair is actually floating off the ground now. Now, the only time that might be appropriate is if you were going to build up a platform to reach those stairs. So that's not the condition that we have in this case. So I'm going to take that little dot and drag it back 2 clicks to get back to riser 1. But that's what the little round dot does. Now, the triangle, I think, is way more interesting. If you manipulate that one, watch what happens. So I'm going to take that and drag it to the left a couple clicks. So now my top run says I still start at riser 1, but look where I'm ending. I'm ending at riser 12. As a consequence, I need to end up at 18, right? So here I've got 13 through 18. So while we lengthened the first run, it actually shortened the second one. And then you may have noticed also that the consequence for the landing is that the landing had to move up, right? Now watch the landing as we do it the other way. I'm going to drag that now back this way. And notice that the top run shortens, the bottom one lengthens, and the landing moves down. So all of these pieces are interconnected with one another. In fact, you can even select the landing, and there's a relative height right here, and you can type in a value. I'll do 5 in imperial or 1,500 millimeters in metric, and that will affect both runs. Okay? So a lot of different ways that you can manipulate that. So what I want to do is I want to select the top run here, and I'm going to use the triangle and stretch this so that I end up with risers 1 through 11 across the top and 12 through 18 across the bottom. Okay, so that's the final configuration that I'm looking for there. Once I've done that, I'm going to go ahead here and click Finish. Okay, so that now completes the shape of the stair that I'm after. Now, notice the stair is kind of floating down here in space, okay? I often like to do it that way. When I'm building a stair, I like to just build it in free space first, and then I like to move it into the position where it needs to go. Now, it's not required that you do it that way, but that's just my personal preference. I just find it a little easier. Now, if you look here in the 3D, you can see we've got a little piece of the floor kind of jutting into the space there, and that's the top landing that we're trying to get to with these stairs. So I'm going to take the entire stair object and move it over to that location. Now, it would be easier to do that in plan if I could see where that landing is. And if you think back to one of our earlier videos, the video where we created roofs, you remember that we had a feature called underlay. Well, we can turn on the underlay for the level 1 floor plan temporarily and show the second floor so that we can make this move easier. So that's what I'm going to do. Make sure nothing is selected in your floor plan. Scroll down and locate the underlay setting. It's currently set to none, and I'm going to choose L2 and then apply that. And now you're going to see that underlay ghost in that location. Now I can simply select the stair and move it. So I'm going to kind of move it roughly first, then zoom in, and I want to snap right from the bottom endpoint right there. So right there, and snap that right to this point here. And so now the stair is positioned in the location where I want it. However, notice in 3D that even though it looks good in plan, it doesn't quite look right in 3D. So our runs are reversed. Well, it turns out there's a really easy solution to that. If you just click the stair, notice this little arrow here. This allows you to flip the direction of the stair. So I'm just going to click that. And the plan view remains unchanged, but notice that flipped the two runs and the landing adjusted. And so now it makes a lot more sense, and we're able to go up the stairs and end up at the desired location on the landing above. So those are some of the more common modifications you might want to make to stairs as you're working on your own projects. I encourage you to experiment further here in this file if you wish before continuing on. When you build a stair in Revit, initially it will span from one level to another, but it's possible to select additional levels and create what Revit calls a multi-story stair. So in this video, I want to talk about that concept, and I'm going to demonstrate it in the context of the sample architectural project that comes with the software. Now, it's possible that you might see it right here on your recent files area of the home screen, but chances are you're not going to see it displayed there because you're going to see your own recent files here. So if that's the case, come up here to the top and click this back button here. That takes you back to the ribbon interface. Open up the file menu, highlight open, scroll down here to sample files and click it, and that will display a window with all of the sample files. Scroll down to the bottom and you're looking for Snowden Towers Sample Architectural. And this is the file that we want to open. Now, you must open this from the locally installed copy that comes with Revit. I am not providing this separately as an exercise file, so you do need to open it from your installed copy, but it is included with the Revit software in that folder. So when the file loads, we're going to be looking at the cover page, and I want to consider the stairs, as we said. So I could scroll through the project browser looking for views that show the stairs, but a much easier thing to do is to take advantage of this search field here at the top of project browser. You can put in any keyword you want, such as stair, and notice that will filter the list of available views to only those that contain that keyword. So we've got several 3D views that focus on the stairs and several sections that do as well. So I'm going to start in this one here called Cutaway Stair 1, and I'm going to double click it, and I'll just zoom in just a touch, and I just want to show you what a multi-story stair is in this view. Move your mouse near one of the stairs, and it will highlight vertically the entire thing with a dashed box. Now, if you're thinking that dashed box looks familiar and kind of seems a little bit like a group, then that's a correct intuition. It's not exactly a group. Multi-story stairs are not groups, but they have a lot of similar characteristics. And of course, they have the similar interface here. So when I click on it to select, it selects the entire stair tower as a single element. So that's what we're going to be considering here in this file. Now, I'm going to focus on a different one of the stairs. There's actually 3 stair towers in this project, and they're all a little bit different. So I encourage you to explore each one. But let's go to Cutaway Stair 3 instead. And the reason I wanted to go to Stair 3 is because at the bottom of the building, you've got just some standalone stairs. So right here, we have a straight run stair, which goes from the street level up to the next level above. This one is kind of interesting because it switches back twice. So it starts down in the basement level, goes up to a landing, then goes up to another landing, and then ends up at street level. Okay. Those are not multi-story stairs. Those are just plain old standalone stairs like the one that we built together in an earlier video. So if you want to create a multi-story stair, you start with a stair. Okay. And if you're not sure how to create a stair, go back and watch the earlier video where we covered that. Once you've done that, then you can turn it into a multi-story stair like we see here on the upper levels of Stair Tower 3. Okay. Now, in order to work with the multi-story stair, you need to be in a view where you can see the levels. So the levels are not turned on in this 3D view. So what I'm going to do is open up the section instead. So there is a transverse section, Stair 3 right here. I'll double click to open that. And now we're looking at that stair tower in section. So again, here was the basement stair. Here's that straight run going from level 1 to level 2, and then the stair tower above it. So why don't we start with this one right here? And what I'm going to do is just copy that over here outside the building. And then I'm going to click modify. And let me just show you how you can turn a regular old stair into a multi-story stair. When you select it, there is a select levels button right here. Simply click that and it will prompt you to select additional levels. So I could select just level 3, or I could add to that level 4. I could pick only level 4, or I could hold the control key down and select both levels 3 and 4. It's whatever you want to do. You can add one level or many levels. And when you click finish, it will turn that into a multi-story stair. So notice that it now gets that dash box around it. When you hover over it, it says it's a multi-story stair. And what it essentially did was take the stair that you had and copy it to the upper levels. But now you'll also notice an interesting thing takes place, right? The height from level 1 to level 2 was rather short. Okay, I'm going to throw a dimension on here to show you. Now, even if you're working in metric, this particular file is in imperial only. So just bear with the imperial dimensions if you're a metric user. My apologies for that. Notice that the floor-to-floor heights of each of these stairs is different. So what that means is, even though this is considered a multi-story stair, if you tab in, each one of these is going to be independent of the others. Now, once you've created a multi-story stair, you can always modify it. So what I'm going to do is add to it level 5. Now let's throw a dimension between level 4 and level 5, and notice that that dimension is the same as the distance between level 3 and level 4. They're both 13 foot 4 inches. So I'm going to select this stair, and now the button changed from add levels to connect disconnect levels. So using this button, you can now remove levels if you want to. So I can do disconnect levels and say I no longer want level 4, and it removes that from the stair tower. Now that's my stair tower. Or I could go back in to connect disconnect, and this time I will connect levels, and I'll add in both levels 4 and level 5, and I'll click finish. And now you can see that my stair tower goes 4 levels. But here's how it's different now. Because the height between level 3 and 4 is the same as 4 and 5, when I tab in, this stair is independent, this stair is independent, but notice what happens with these two. Okay. Now, I'm not sure the official term for this from Revit, but I call these height groups. Okay. So each height that's the same, it kind of treats those as a single item. And what we mean by that is if you were to tab in and select one of these stairs now and do edit stairs, if I were to change this stair in some way, the changes that I apply to it will apply to the other instances of the height group. Now, there's not much I can change about a straight run stair, so I'm going to do something a little silly. I'm going to delete the stringers. So that's going to leave me with just the stair itself, the run. And when I click finish, notice that those changes apply to both instances of that height group, but did not apply down here or down here. So that's kind of the overall behavior of a multi-story stair. Okay. So once you kind of play around with it a little bit yourself off to the side, then you can kind of see the ones that are already here in this file and kind of have a little bit more understanding about how they function. So I do encourage you to spend some more time in this file. look at all three stairs in the three different stair towers because each one is a little different than the other. And I think you can learn a lot about stairs in general and certainly multi-story stairs by reverse engineering what you find here in this sample file. Most building codes have requirements for railings to extend past the ends of stairwells at both the top and the bottom. And so in this video, I want to show you some techniques we can use to achieve that using Revit handrails. So I'm actually going to do two different conditions. For this railing here, I want it to extend down and return back to the post. And for this railing here, I want it to extend and return into the wall. So since I want to do two different things, I'm going to duplicate the type for each of these railings and give them separate names. So I'm going to click Edit Type on the one by the wall there and duplicate it. And I'll just add a suffix to the name there for wall extension. And then I'll repeat that with this one. Duplicate it. All right. So now I have two different railing types, and we can treat each of them a little bit differently. So I'm going to pan this view over slightly because we're going to be going in and out of dialog boxes, and I want to be able to see the view in the background as we work. So with this railing selected, I'm going to click Edit Type, and I'm going to move this out of the way as well so that we can see both the 3D view and the settings. And there are several different places where we have rail structure in the railing type. At the very top here, we have rail structure non-continuous. That doesn't support extensions, so we're not going to be discussing that at all here in this video. So I'm just going to ignore that. If you scroll down a little bit, we have top rail, handrail 1, and handrail 2. Each of those does support extensions, so that's what we'll be discussing from here on out. Now, I'm going to start with the top rail, and notice that currently the type is set to circular. I'm going to click the little browse button next to that. That opens up the properties for the circular type. And then if you scroll down slightly, you will see extension settings for beginning and bottom and for end and top. So since we're looking at the bottom of the stair, I will edit this value right here. If you're working in imperial, put in 1 foot. If you're working in metric, put in 300 millimeters and click apply. And there's our first gotcha. Notice that it extended on both railings. Now, at this point, you might be thinking, why is that? Didn't we just duplicate both of those railing types? Shouldn't they behave independently? And the answer is yes, we did duplicate both railing types, but railings are a nested collection of settings. And both of those railing types that we duplicated are referring to the top rail type called circular. So what I'm going to do is set this back to 0. And I'll click OK, and that will remove the extension temporarily. And then what I want to do instead is click back into the properties here, but before I make any changes, I'm going to duplicate it and use the same suffix on the end of the name that I did a moment ago. I'll click OK, and now I'll set that beginning bottom length to 1 or 300 millimeters, click Apply, click OK, and then apply. And notice that it now only applies to the one railing. So now we're starting to make some progress. So what's most challenging about this functionality is just knowing which dialog box to be in and kind of getting through all the weird little gotchas that occur along the way. So you just have to be very methodical about your approach here and you can get good results. So, okay, so now that we've done that and we know that we're getting what we want, there's still one more setting I want to change because I did, after all, say that I wanted to extend it and return it back to the post. So let's click in here and go back to those properties one more time. The length is just one of the settings, but notice here, there's a drop down for extension style, and we can do wall, floor, or post. So here's what floor looks like. And we said we wanted post, so here's what post looks like. So that looks pretty good, but we also have this other setting here where you can extend a tread depth in addition to the length. So I'm going to check this box and click apply, and that extends it out further, the distance of 1 tread, which is a pretty common code requirement. And that completes that railing type. So I'm going to OK out of there a few times, and now we'll direct our attention to this one. So I'm going to go back to edit type here, and notice the top rail here is still set to circular. Okay. Well, you could go to edit type, duplicate, and call it wall extension, except that even though the extension types say that they support wall extensions, that's actually not the case for top rails. So that's another gotcha that I will spare you from in this example. So we can't use a top rail here if we want to do a wall extension. So what we're going to do instead is focus on handrails. Now, it doesn't matter whether you use handrail 1 or 2. Railings can have 1 handrail or they can have 2 handrails, 1 on each side. So that's why there's 2 of them. But in our case, we only need 1. So I'm just going to focus on handrail 1, and the type currently says none. So what we're going to do is click the little browse button there, and we're in a similar dialog, and it has its own type called circular. Now, just to keep all this straight, best practice, let's duplicate it and rename this to wall extension. I'll click OK. And now we can configure it to have that extension. So we've already seen that we can set the length. We've already seen that we can do plus a tread depth. And right here, we can choose one of the 3 types. So in this case, I want the wall extension type. And I'll click OK, OK again. And there's our final gotcha. Nothing happens. So at this point, it would be understandable if you were getting frustrated, right? So let's go to edit type. And the last thing that we need to talk about with respect to handrail 1 and 2 is, even though you can configure a type and assign it and set up all the settings, there's a little setting right here that we missed called position. And it currently says none. And you may be thinking, why on earth would I ever want to choose a type and leave it set to none? I don't really have a good answer for that question, but when you open up the list, it maybe makes a little bit more sense because there's an option for either left or right or both left and right. So when you consider that there's different places we can position it, I suppose having the none option seems a little more logical. But anyway, we need to choose one of these other settings. So I'm going to choose left and click apply. And in that case, I actually took a guess and I guessed correctly, and it looks fine. If in fact it went to the opposite side, you could just switch it to right and try that again. But that completes that wall extension railing as well. So setting up the extensions, a little bit challenging if it's your first time, but stick with it. It's one of those things that once you get past all the little gotchas, it's really not that hard to do, and you can get railings that conform to local building codes. In this video, we're going to create a freestanding railing. So up until now, the railings that we've seen have been attached to stairs, and railings are somewhat unique in the sense that you can create them either hosted to a stair, in which the stair determines the shape of the railing, or you can draw them yourself freestanding for guardrails, handrails, that sort of thing. So in this video, we're going to look at a guardrail example, and I'm going to zoom in here. I'm in the second floor plan, and I want the guardrail to follow this balcony that we have up here on the second floor, this floor element here. So to do that, we're going to go to the railing tool, and you'll see that there's 2 options, sketch path or place on stair and ramp. We're actually going to look at both of these in this video. I've removed the railings from the stair so that we can try both tools. But let's start with the sketch path tool, and we'll sketch a freestanding guardrail first. So we could just simply start drawing the path of the railing, but I think it'll be easier if we use this pick lines tool right here. And the reason for that is because we can just touch the edges of other geometry like the edges of the floor. Now, the only trouble with that is if I just click the edge, it's putting it right on that edge. And I think it would be nicer if it was offset away from that just a little bit. So I'm going to do Control Z one time to undo that. And then up here on the options bar, I have an offset parameter. And in the imperial file, I'm going to use an offset of 2 inches. If you're working in the metric file, use 50 millimeters. And now you'll see that I can either offset to either side of the line. So I just want to offset to the inside where the floor slab is. Click. I'll do this little short line here. Click. And this long one right there. I'll click the modify tool to cancel. If we zoom in at this end, everything looks pretty good. If we go to the other end, you'll see that the sketch line is just a little bit too long and it penetrates into this column right here. So easy enough to fix that. Just select the sketch line, use the little grip control at the end here, and we're just going to drag that back some distance like so. Then you're going to see some temporary dimensions appear here. And there's a witness line grip right here, which is referencing this reference line. I'm going to click and drag that dot to snap it to the column face. And now I can edit this dimension value and put in the offset that I'd like. I'm going to use 4 inches for imperial or 100 millimeters in metric. So that is the sketched path for my railing. I'll click anywhere to deselect. Let's click the finish tool. And you can see the railing appear here in the floor plan, but I think it'll be a little bit easier to understand what we've created if we go to 3D. So I'm going to scroll down here on the project browser and locate the 3D stair view. This is a view that we used in earlier videos. And you can see that railing right there up along the balcony. Now I'm going to hold the shift key down and orbit the wheel to kind of spin around to a different vantage point so that we can see it maybe a little more clearly. So you can see it stops here right at the top of the stairs. And then right there, you can see the little 4-inch or 100 millimeter gap that we placed at the end. Now, if you're satisfied with this railing type, you can leave it alone. But I've got some other railing types here in the file, which might be a little bit nicer in this scenario. So in earlier videos, we were using the IBC pipe rail type. Now that type is right here. This is the one that was built into the template file that we used to start this project. So it's IBC pipe rail stringer, extension top and bottom. If you watched the previous video, then you saw that railings can have extensions at the top or bottom. Now this railing is not on a stair, so top or bottom would be like left and right, if you want to think of it that way. So if I use that railing type for this guardrail, you can see that the extensions don't really work for us in this scenario because now it's penetrating past and kind of projecting over the stair. And then this one, you have to hover over it to see it's actually now penetrating into the column geometry. So what I've done in this file to kind of save us a little bit of time is I duplicated this railing type a couple times and removed the extensions for the different scenarios that we're going to have here. So this one here that says no extension is a copy of the same railing, just with the extensions removed on both ends. So I'm going to choose that one. And you can see now that we've got the railing freestanding over here and freestanding over here. And I think that looks a little bit better. So to finish this up, I'm going to spin this around in 3D here so that we can see the staircase now. And I've removed the railings from the stairs in the exercise file, so let's add them back again now. That was that other tool on the drop-down for the railing tool that we saw at the beginning here. So all you need to do to add the railings back to the stair is choose Place on Stair or Ramp, and then you can touch the stair and it will add those railings. Now, before I do that, though, I always forget to check this. So let me point that out to you and see if I can save you the trouble of making that mistake. Just like we saw when we were placing the railing inside the stair, you can choose whether or not the railing should reference the treads or the stringers. I think it'll be nicer if we reference the stringers. So I'm going to choose that button before I click it. And then when I do, you'll see it'll create a railing on both sides. Now I'm going to click the modify tool to cancel out. And of course, it's using that default handrail rectangular again. So now what I'm going to do is swap out each one of those with the appropriate types from the ones I showed you a moment ago. When you're using the Pick Stair tool to add railings, it automatically uses the same railing on both sides of the stair. You don't have control over that. So you're always going to need to come back later and change out the railing type to whatever you want after you've placed it. So for the internal railing here, I've created one that has the extension only at the bottom. So you can see up here at the top where it meets the other handrail, I don't want to have an extension. I just want those to come together nice and cleanly. But down at the bottom, I do want to extend out. So that's what this railing is for right here. And you'll see that it will connect to this one and it will extend out here. Now we've got a little bit of an overlap there that we'll deal with in just a moment. But let's come back to this one now. And we're going to choose the original type for that one with the extension at both the top and the bottom, since it's freestanding over here and here. Now I'm going to go back to the level 2 floor plan, and you can see that I've got a slight overlap and that my offset is a little bit off there. So you can easily go back to the railing, choose Edit Path. It looks as though the offset of 2 inches should have probably been maybe 1 inch. Now, I still like 2 inches for this segment and the other segment. So what I'm going to do is just take this segment here, move it down 1 inch or 25 millimeters if you're working in metric to get it in the center of this other one. And then I'll just take this little grip here and pull it back to right there so that it snaps to the end of the railing. There it is. Okay, and I will click finish. And now you can see that touches more cleanly. And when we go back to 3D, that looks a lot better. So that is how you can create custom railings, both for handrail conditions, guardrails, and also to place them on stairs or ramps that don't already have them.